breakthrough coach. And my focus, I have a heart for families, 100%. My focus is around self-awareness and communication, because those are the things that are going to break these generational patterns that we keep passing down. I'm also a best-selling author. My book is, where are you? Raising Badass Humans. There you go. And a speaker.
Perfect. So for those who are wondering, you won't get a free copy of the book. No, I'm just joking. The book is amazing. And I told her before, I'm going to tell her again, the title, I love that title.
Thank you. It's a little controversial, but it catches attention.
I know, and the imagery is like, pick me up, right? The book. Very warm colors. So tell us, how did you start this journey of wanting to assist parents in this way? And what pushed you to say, hey, let's figure this out, because there isn't a manual for being a parent, but I want to pay it forward and help parents who are looking for assistance.
So I struggled for many years to get pregnant. And, I assumed that once I finally did, it would just be like, oh, life is wonderful. Even though I had 13 nieces and nephews, and I knew it's hard to be a parent, you don't know until you're really in the thick of it. And then I had 2, and then I had 3, and it just gets harder and harder. And all these generational patterns that had been handed down to me that I thought I had dealt with really started coming out. Nothing will bring you back to those patterns like being a mom. When you're overtired, stressed out, have 1,000 things to do every day, and every moment you're pulled in every direction. All of a sudden, I was screaming at little children, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is not the mom I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be the mom doing yoga and meditating with my children, and everything's beautiful. And instead, I'm screaming at them to get them out the door, and finding myself literally in a fetal position on the floor crying because I had so much guilt over it all. And it wasn't until I started understanding what generational patterns are, how they get handed down to you through the generations, that I finally was like, I need to work on this and I need to fix this. And that's when I dug into NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which gets to the unconscious mind, because that's where you need to heal things to make a lasting change. And once I started doing that and was able to see where all this stuff was coming from and starting to heal it, I found these ways to connect with my children that are breaking the patterns. And I wanted to share that. So I put it all down in my book. The subtitle is 14 Intentional Connections That Nurture Your Child's Emotional Intelligence and Sense of Self-Worth.
I know many women experience difficulty trying to get pregnant because it's many women want to be a mother.
Yes.
Right. And they want to be the best mother that they can be.
Absolutely.
But I think in general, that is something that they want to be mom number one.
Yeah.
I don't think any mom or dad goes into her saying, you know what, I'm going to try my best, but I know I'm going to be a jackass.
Yeah, I'm going to suck it.
Yeah. If I lose them, if they die, they die. Right. I don't think anyone has that kind of conversation. But I hope not too. But one thing that I will say is it's like marriage. It's like dating, even though it's different. There's so many self-help books, but there isn't really one that can fit every single person. So when you were navigating your journey, where were you pulling your inspiration, your direction from? Because you started off trying to get pregnant, trying to figure it out. And now you're like, hey, I think I can actually pass down some wisdom to break the generational trauma and the experiences that many of us have.
A lot of my inspiration comes from my sister. I'm the youngest of 7. My sister, who's 7 years older than me, passed away at the age of 45 because she literally drank herself to death. because we come from a generation of you don't talk about something if it's uncomfortable. Traumas happen to you and you shove them down. And she was never allowed to express the things that were so painful for her. And she hid it so well. She would walk into a room and she would have the brightest smile out of anyone in the room. She had the loudest laugh. Everyone was attracted to her and believed she was truly happy, happy, happy. When inside she was dying, she was in so much pain and she was masking that. And when I started noticing these patterns after I had my children, and I started noticing my kids were starting to take on mine and my husband's behaviors. They started having depression. They started having anger management issues. They started people pleasing. That's when I was like, no, this can't happen anymore. Something really has to be done about this. And you just correlated it to dating. And it really is. One of my chapters in my book is called Date Your Kids, because it is so important to spend one-on-one time with them, especially when you have multiples. Because nothing grows their sense of self-worth like paying attention to them. And you take them just for a few hours, once a month is what I try and do. I take one out at a time. We maybe go to lunch, maybe we have a picnic, maybe we do a hike, maybe we go to a movie. I let them pick, because what they're interested in, they need to know is important. So I make it all about them. That's when they start to feel comfortable. They start to share things that are going on in their life, and we can talk about it. And it really, really grows their emotional intelligence.
I know for me, I have a brother and a sister, both younger. My brother is the middle child. And there's always this joke that the middle child falls between the cracks, right? Like the firstborn gets everything, which is me, because they're the ones who have like 1,000 godparents, right? Everybody
Right.
wants to be a godparent for the first one.
So true.
And the last one is always the baby. And the middle one, although in my experience, they seem to get the most attention, because whatever went wrong with the first child, you're not going to repeat with the second.
Right.
Right. And some parents, when they tell me, they're like, Terrain, what I do is always try to make sure I have an even number of children to avoid the middle child. Right. So they would have 2, 4, 6, 8, and they would try to figure out, but they would either do them within a year together, so there isn't that gap, or what they'll do is they'll do the first, figure it out, and then the second, third, and fourth, they'll be closer together so they can grow up together.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you have a number of children. Is there a big age between them? And if so, or if not, how did you navigate dating your children when you're trying to allocate not only your time for yourself, your husband, but all these other children as well?
Right. So my children are each 3 years apart. That was not on purpose. I very much wanted them to be boom, 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 so they could really grow up and be super connected together. However, biologically, it just wasn't working. And so they did come out 3 years apart. I really believe that, that first one, like you said, gets so much attention, especially when we had been trying for years. And then everybody's so excited for us. We finally had a baby. Everybody's right there. And that second one doesn't get the same attention. I do everything in my power to make sure she feels just as important as her older sister and her younger brother. And I still see it, though. I still see the differences. I see the favoritism towards my oldest. I also see that I'm harder on my oldest, even though I try my best not to be. But how I allocate that is I would do it when either grandma can watch the kids or dad could watch the kids. Currently, we're in a situation where I'm the only adult in the house. Now, we had a different kind of lifestyle. We traveled in our RV for maybe 4 years. So we have a very small, close-knit home. So even though they have age difference, they're together all the time. And I have seen that that has helped with their closeness for sure. And so we live in a giant campground that has multiple neighborhoods. It's actually a really cool setting. And it's a place I'm very comfortable with my kids being. So I can take one and just like go to the campground store, get a snack, and we can go for a walk through the woods together while the other two are at the neighbor's house or something.
That's good that you do that because you're paying attention and you're aware. Do you
Mhm.
have parents that come up to you and they may feel that that isn't the case, but then when you come into the picture and you're helping them along, you're like, that actually is the case. I can see who's your favorite, which one you pay the least amount of attention to, and the one, and I think this is a fortunate situation where there's that child that is yearning for that connection, that is basically almost screaming out for it, but
Yeah,
they don't necessarily get it. Have you seen that as well?
I have. And it's hard to bring it to their attention in a gentle way, but it is definitely possible because they're not aware of it. And it's all about being self-aware. And once they are, they can be like, oh, I didn't even see I was doing that. I didn't see how I was showing favoritism here. And so then they are thankfully grateful and can make the necessary changes to make sure everybody feels comfortable. And I've had a lot of parents be like, well, yeah, that's great and all, but I can't afford to take my kids on dates. I'm like, you don't have to pay a penny for it. A hike doesn't cost anything. A picnic doesn't cost you any more money than you already spent on the groceries in your house. They just want to be with you. They just want to know they matter to you. And that's the most important thing.
I think sometimes we underestimate the value of time and how it's worth more than any form of currency that man, women have ever created, right?
Absolutely. And the
Um,
time, not even the quantity, but the quality of that time spent together.
yes, yes. Like you mentioned, like the hike.
Hmm.
And the reason why I always like to go back to, let's say, like a work analogy or a dating analogy is we get into this habit sometimes that if we're not spending X amount of dollars, that we can't have a good time,
Yeah, it's true.
right?
And that's some people's love language. And I've had to like their grandma, bless her, has the biggest heart and gives them so much. But her love language is gifts. And I'm a minimalist. So that's something I had to get over myself to be like, that's how she shows her grandkids love. And that's okay. And they know she loves them. Whereas for me, it's let me take you on a walk. Let's talk. Let's have a deep conversation. Everyone has different love languages, and that's how she shows up for them.
And I think that's where people would probably need to understand what their children's are because it's fine to raise them
Yes.
to say that, well, your love language is going to be quality time because that's mine.
Right,
That might
right.
not be so, right? All they may want is for their mom and their dad to say, you did a good job. I love you today.
Yes.
That is sufficient. I know my love language is words of affirmation.
My,
And growing up, I got none of that because I wasn't raised with my mom and my dad. I was raised by my grandmother. So I
okay.
guess for me, because I didn't get it growing up, it developed into something I really wanted, therefore it became my love language.
Definitely.
Um, Gifts meant very little to me, but I can appreciate if, let's say, for example, you, Kat, that was your love language, and I'm trying to show you that I care about you.
Right.
You need to identify what is going to make, instead of us telling them what's going to make them happy, we should ask them what's going to make them happy. Have you had those types of conversations with the parents you work with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that because it's 100% true. It is definitely about acknowledging what makes them happy. Like my oldest, her love language is gift giving, not necessarily gift receiving. She doesn't care if she gets them. Of course, she appreciates them, but for her, she shows people love by making them something and giving it to them. Or if she sees something while we're out and about and she can afford it, she'll buy it for the person. And that's great. My middle, her love language is 100% physical touch. She loves to be cuddled. And so it is very important to pay attention to what each individual wants. And I love that you said ask them, because they will tell you. It's
Those
so
who
important.
are For those who are listening on Facebook, YouTube, and our social media, please continue along for more wonderful interviews with my incredible guest here, Kat, and we will be back for